Well, Dr. Wise, it's nice to spend some time with you. I want to go over some topics that I'm finding are sort of hot topics around educational leadership that I'm hearing more and more chatter from your colleagues in the role of a superintendent. And one would be resources that districts have access to, and then alternative ways that they can bring in funding and support to better or more efficiently run their schools and districts. If we think about incorporating the private sector or corporations, how do you see that interfacing with public schools to help offset challenges that we might have in budget shortfalls?
Well, I think we have a great opportunity in front of us in connecting with our communities and our businesses. It's our job to produce graduates that have the skill sets that are able to contribute to the workforce demands. What better way to bring them in and have them be part of that process? So both having them come into our schools and having us have our kids do internships with their businesses can help close that resource gap.
And what about from a funding perspective? Are you seeing a shift in that where we're finding ways that public and private can sort of live in the same space? Because I know basically for generations we've struggled with that concept. We have allowed privatization of everything from our sanitation to our food service and these different things, but now we're seeing, wait a minute, there are other opportunities potentially to incorporate the private sector from a funding element.
We have no other choice but to evolve in that area, because as our state and federal resources decline, our community resources have to increase. And what better way than to connect with our businesses, our towns, our community leaders, our universities to help offset some of those resource losses from state and federal funds.
Let's talk about funding, but slide it over into the technology space from a resource, a very specific element that I know a lot of people talk about is, how do we provide the most up-to-date but thoughtful, applicable technology? Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that we're starting to make what I would deem maybe better decisions or more thoughtful decisions around the difference between K-8 and 8-12, or that the learner at different ages is going to experience the technology different, and then also that the teachers at those different levels of school are going to look for technology that's going to provide different levels of services. How do you look at differentiating technology in the same way that we're personalizing learning for students in the way in which you're purchasing district-wide?
Well, I think learning comes first. We are doing a much better job utilizing brain-based research. The John Hattie study on visible learning has been fantastic. It's been a great guide for us in providing quality feedback to students on the skills in which they're progressing on and learning. And then we use technology as a tool. So instead of going out and just purchasing technology for students, we look at learning and what learning needs kids have, and then we adapt the technology to their learning needs.
So let's now talk a little bit about the consumption of learning and the way in which we then communicate that out. So I think it's interesting that, of course, assessments, that's sort of buzzword, and obviously community members, parents, struggle oftentimes to understand where we're going in education with assessments. How do you look at capturing student achievement and then communicating that out? Because it seems like we're getting savvier in that way, where there's not such a fear factor in the way we're doing that. How have you, from a district perspective, looked at student achievement wrapped with around assessment, and then communicating that out in a way that is documented, that is supportive?
We've moved to a skills-based system, K-12 in our school district. We no longer have letter grades, K-8. And in 9-12, we have skills-based reporting. We also have to have letter grades to this point. But moving away from the old grading and assessment models to a more skills-based approach. So the student knows exactly what skill they need to obtain and demonstrate, and then we report progress back to the student on where they are in that process using a 4, 3, 2, or 1. We do all that online. The parents have access. We communicate to the kids one-on-one, face-to-face about how they are doing. So feedback is very important in the learning process, and we take that very seriously. So from our district perspective, we want to make sure all of the kids have the skills that they need to be successful. And the best way to do that is to give them feedback on their progress.
And Dr. Rice, we are seeing students now looked as not consumers as we've had in the past of learning and knowledge and skills, but as creators. How do you look at it from a staff support perspective and a professional learning or professional development perspective when we think about how to support your teachers along the way so that this gradual shift where even our youngest students are creating themselves and demonstrating that they can basically self-produce what they're learning in ways that you and I probably didn't have years ago, right?
Right.
How do you support your educators so that they can successfully live and work in an environment where the students are really becoming the creators to a large degree?
Well, we focus on the heart and the hand skills as well as the head skills. Content-driven education was the old paradigm. What the workforce needs today and in the future are kids that have people skills. So we focus a great amount of time on perseverance and grit and creativity and communication and empathy and collaboration and all of the self skills that a student needs in order to be successful in the economy for today and tomorrow. So we also provide parents feedback, and we send the message out when we through our report cards, through our assessment systems, that those skills are just as important as the content that kids sometimes receive inside classrooms.
Let's close with this. The role of the superintendent, for you personally, how has it changed in what you think about how it's expanding in the way in which you interface with the community? It seems to be an ever-evolving role, and I think it's important to share with communities just the way in which a superintendent thinks about the changing role. It's not static, right? It's not what you did last year is changing this year in the way you're communicating, I would imagine, just in being progressive in the way you try to assist your community. How has it changed for you personally?
There is a great amount of personal accountability to ensure that every student graduates with the skills that they need to be prepared for college, career, and life. And as the superintendency has evolved, that accountability has become greater, both from a personal standpoint as well as from a community standpoint. So it's a great challenge. I accept that challenge. I love what I do, and I give everything I can to make sure those kids get the skills they need.
Continued success, Dr. Wise.
Thank you.